Good day. Welcome back to another one of these. With the Los Angeles Lakers winning the 2020 title, I've got no more games to sort of break down, analyze, or even talk about. So we're going to take a change of pace. We're going to change gears, change lanes, whatever you want to bloody call it. And we're going to start bringing up sort of interesting topics within the NBA community that I can discuss and it can sort of potentially gain a bit of a discussion, and we can see where it leads us. So the first one that I've sort of been lining up for a while is the stock movements seen after this postseason. And if you don't know what I mean by that, I'm basically going to go through the biggest offenders of their stock dropping and their reputation taking a hit from their performance over this postseason, and those that saw themselves rise from being a role player to a star, or a star to a superstar, or just giving us a glimpse into potential, for lack of a better way of explaining it. So I'm going to go straight into this, and I'm going to go one bad, one good, one bad, one good, and I've got about 6 here in total. And yeah, we'll just get straight on into it. So the first person that I thought whose reputation and their stock really took a hit was Russell Westbrook. And I know that he has a lot of very diehard fans, and I can understand why he does. He's an incredibly entertaining player to watch. He's explosive, he's dynamic, he's probably one of the most physically gifted players in the league. You could even go into league history, just how explosive and dynamic he is. But he did not play well this postseason, and his career is starting to get painted with this brush of abysmal shot selection. And you saw it especially during that Lakers series where he had quite a few air balls. And he's not a three-point shooter. I mean, for the season, the regular season, he shot 25.8% from three, and he shot 24.2% during the playoffs. But he continues to shoot. And I understand that it's part of the offense and it is part of the game nowadays, but it's not part of yours, mate. Stop it. You can't hit him. It just doesn't make sense. And I mean, when you go from his regular season stats, he actually had a fairly strong season outside of his abysmal three-point percentage, in that he had 27.2 points per game, 7.9 rebounds per game, and 7 assists on 47% shooting, 25 or 26% three-point percent shooting, and 76.3% free throw shooting. Whereas when he gets to the playoffs, and bear in mind that he has a similar usage as he has for his career, roughly 31%. He had 17.9 points, 7 rebounds, and 4.6 assists. Now that's the thing that really hurts, because he's meant to be a playmaker and a facilitator, and he just isn't doing that. He shot 42.1% from the field, which hurts. He shot 24.2%, as I said before, from three, and he shot an abysmal 53.1% from the line. He had an offensive rating of 89, and his overall box plus minus was minus 3.2, which is it just doesn't make sense when you're in this team that prides themselves on this efficient offensive system. And for these reasons, to me, his stock has really taken a hit. Now, moving on, when I was making this list, I actually had Bam, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, big pluses. Then I even had guys like Goran Dragic, even Jay Crowder, and all these other players. And I realized this whole Heat team, their entire stock has just skyrocketed, and they made it to the finals. No, who would have realistically thought that this Heat team, the 5th seed, led by Jimmy Butler, who was known as a star but not a superstar, was able to do this, as well as with this rookie in Tyler Hero, who everyone thought who had a strong rookie season, but thought that was basically just going to be a building block for him, just erupt, especially in the Eastern Conference Finals. You had Duncan Robinson, who hit the most threes apart from Steph Curry and Ray Allen in a single game. You had Bam, who throughout these playoffs solidified himself, definitely to me, as the best all-round center in the game. This entire team's stock is just at all-time highs. And Jimmy Butler, to me, from like at this moment, I consider a superstar. Now we have to see if he can continue this on next season, but he's definitely proven that when he needs to, he can bring the game that he needs to. Now moving it on to another person who really needs no introduction, and I really won't need to go very deep into this because I'm pretty sure the majority of us know this, but it's Paul George. And funnily enough, if you look at his numbers, they're not bad. From a statistic standpoint, he wasn't bad, but I'm pretty sure we can all agree he failed the eye test. When it came down to crucial plays, he just didn't make them. When it came down to things that he should be doing as a superstar or even a star level talent, just wasn't doing it. He was pathetic at certain points, to be honest. And I understand that's harsh, and a lot of people have tried to defend him. But when you're a superstar in this league and you're getting paid a certain amount of money, you do need to perform. This is a performance-based profession. And if you can't perform, you shouldn't be getting paid. That's just the cold truth of it. And I do hope that he can pick up the pieces of his reputation and build on it. Because the way he carries himself during these situations definitely does not help his case, where he's saying stuff like that's not a good shot, or he's criticizing the refs or other players on the opposite team, or he goes in and he's met with eye rolls by his own teammates. It's the man's stock has just, this is an all-time low for someone of this caliber. He was a MVP candidate in OKC, and now he's the laughing stock of this league at the moment, and it is quite sad. But moving on, we got probably the individual who definitely saw the biggest rise in their stock is Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets. I mean, even without looking at his statistics, this man led this underdog team to 2 3-1 comebacks against a Jazz team led by an incredibly strong Donovan Mitchell, who just missed my list here, mainly because the next person who I believe's stock increase is more of a personal preference. And he also had this historic duel against this guy. And then he also, funnily enough, this is a statistic that I found out, was that he actually led the entire playoffs in made three-pointers with 62 and didn't even make it to the finals. And now I find that incredibly impressive because the Heat team were prolific three-point shooters and had guys like Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, and then you had Danny Green, who was abysmal, but you also had guys like KCP and all these other actual shooters on the teams, and he was still the one who made the most threes. But apart from that, I mean, just looking at his stats, I mean, this man in the regular season averaged 18.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 4.8 assists on, I would say, fairly decent splits in shooting. Nothing amazing, nothing great. But you put him in the playoffs, and this man averaged 26.5 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 6.6 assists, almost shooting 50-40-90, as well as leading his team. This man has solidified himself after this performance as a star. And I didn't have him anywhere near this at the start of the season, but my God, he blew the bloody doors off the competition at almost every turn. And I'm expecting big bloody things from this Nuggets team. Now, these last two, this last decrease in stock and last increase in stock, are more personal things that I've noticed that didn't really involve all that much in the way of actual analytics. This is more of just the eye test for me. And for me, with the decrease in stock, it's Kemba Walker. And I know a lot of people probably are a bit confused by that one, but in every single possession that I saw Kemba Walker defending, especially, he was almost non-existent. It was quite sad, especially considering that he's surrounded by very strong defensive wing and guard play, in that of Brad Wanamaker. I mean, he's nothing amazing, but he's still a solid defender. You have Marcus Smart, who I think is going to be a defensive player of the year in his career, and Jaylen Brown, who also has all defensive talent. And every single team was able to just target Kemba and go straight at him, and he couldn't do a thing. And I mean, he is a fairly undersized guard. I think he's barely 6 foot, if that. And his weaknesses just show. And you can also see whilst a lot of people say that Kemba has this big game experience because of that legendary UConn run in the NCAA tournament, that's a different ball game to playoff basketball. And I just don't think that he has the experience yet, which is quite sad because he is a very skilled player, but you need to have a different mindset once it reaches the playoffs. And he just, to me, just showed he didn't have that. And I really do hope that he's able to bounce back from this and they're able to work out a better game plan, especially offensively, because you could see in the Heat as well as the Raptors games, they were able to make him a fairly, I wouldn't say a non-factor, because he's still able to do his role and get points and spread the floor if his shot's not falling. But they were able to just do the box and one and basically take him out of the game and make Tatum and Brown basically win it. So hopefully he can bounce back from this. It's just sort of an observation that I noticed. But the last one, and this is one that people may have forgotten, and a lot of people are probably going to say, why wouldn't you have Donovan Mitchell in here? But personally, Lou Dort of the Thunder, to me, raised his stock so much, especially in that Game 7, because the biggest knock on his game was that he was Tony Allen with less offensive game, which is, I mean, he doesn't have the defensive prowess of Allen yet, but Allen's offensive game was basically non-existent as well. And that was the biggest knock on Lou Dort coming into this, as well as even coming into the league. But I think just from how he was able to carry himself against someone like James Harden and this incredibly dynamic Rockets team, that he showed that he has all defensive potential. Definitely. I think that he has the capability of guarding, even though I think he's only 6'3", maybe 6'4". He can guard 1 to 4. He's got the strength, he's got the ability to sort of use power, even though he's got a smaller frame. But he's also incredibly quick, and he just doesn't give up. And you can see that in the Game 7 especially, because when Harden was on the floor, as well as Lou Dort, Harden's effective field goal percentage was actually down by 15.4%. Now that's astounding, because that takes into effect every single type of shooting on the floor. And I think the biggest reason for this is that Lou Dort is someone similar to the likes of Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard, who basically refuse to switch. And if you get a screen on him, he will fight over you, and he has the power to be able to get around you quite easily, and he will force himself around screens to make sure that he is still guarding his man, and he does it phenomenally. And he's got a defensive IQ, which, I mean, I barely knew him coming into these playoffs, but he was definitely able to show that he has this ability to be a defensive anchor on the perimeter for any team, especially this OKC team. So I'm going to leave it at that. Those were the 6 players who I thought either increased or decreased their stock the most during these weird bubble playoffs. I just want to say congratulations again to the 2020 Lakers. It's always good to see good players win, and it's always good to see players that piss people off win, because it's just funny for me as a neutral fan. But leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to continue hearing things like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.